What happens when a picture-perfect family, admired for its wealth and influence, shatters overnight in front of 4 innocent children? This is not just a tabloid story. It is the unraveling of one of Virginia's most prestigious dynasties. Peter Goodwin, 40 years old, heir to a billion-dollar fortune, had everything that many could only dream of: luxury cars, Rolex watches, a glamorous lifestyle, and a respected wife, Dr. Cara Goodwin, a well-known clinical psychologist with a strong public following. Together, they appeared to embody success, stability, and the promise of a modern American fairy tale. But on Christmas 2023, the facade collapsed. While his wife sat across from him cradling their newborn daughter, Peter announced he wanted a divorce. The moment was brutal, shocking, and unforgettable, especially as their 3 other children watched in confusion. Within seconds, the illusion of a perfect home dissolved into chaos as Peter stormed off, shouting and cursing. For a family long considered untouchable, the scene revealed a darker truth. Even the most powerful households are not immune to betrayal. And what followed in the days ahead would not only stain the Goodwin legacy, but also spark outrage across the country. Because just 6 days later, Peter would reappear. This time not with his family, but with a woman no one expected, the nanny who had once cared for his children. The question is, how did a story of wealth and privilege spiral into scandal and heartbreak so quickly? For years, the Goodwins looked like the very definition of privilege and stability. Peter, the charismatic son of billionaire William Goodwin, carried the image of a successful entrepreneur who indulged in fast cars and luxury watches. At his side stood Cara, a woman admired not only for her professional achievements as a clinical psychologist, but also for her presence on social media, where more than 135,000 people followed her parenting advice. With 4 beautiful children, the Goodwins seemed untouchable, a modern dynasty of wealth, intelligence, and influence. But behind the glossy photos and carefully curated smiles, cracks had already begun to form. In 2019, a young woman named Annette Lombard entered their household. At just 21 years old, she was hired as a nanny to care for the children. Over time, her presence became more than temporary. During the pandemic, Annette lived in the Goodwin home, helping the family through long months of uncertainty. She grew so close to them that she referred to the children as siblings. Cara, however, began to sense something deeper. By 2020, her instincts told her that Peter's connection with Annette went beyond professional respect. He later hired her into his company, quickly promoting her to vice president. To Cara, the lines between business, family, and loyalty were dangerously blurred. Still, she tried to maintain the image of unity. Publicly, the Goodwins were flawless. Privately, Cara's unease grew. The more she voiced her concerns, the more Peter dismissed them. And while Cara clung to the hope of preserving her family, Peter quietly began building a very different future, one that would soon erupt in the most public and humiliating way possible. Because the true storm was waiting, and it would break during the holidays. Christmas has always been a season of warmth, family, and forgiveness, but for the Goodwins, Christmas of 2023 would be remembered as the day their world came crashing down. Inside their Virginia home, the scene should have been joyful. A newborn baby in her mother's arms, 3 other children eagerly awaiting holiday cheer, and the promise of another year together. Instead, it became a nightmare. Sitting across the table, Cara held their 4-month-old daughter when Peter delivered words she could hardly comprehend. He wanted a divorce. The announcement was not calm, nor was it private. According to court records, Peter erupted into shouting and curses, his voice echoing through the house as his children looked on in fear and confusion. Then, in a moment that would define the unraveling of their marriage, he stormed out, leaving his wife stunned and broken in front of their children. It was a brutal fracture in what had once been portrayed as a golden family. But what made it worse, what transformed private heartbreak into public scandal, was what happened next. Just 6 days later, Peter reappeared. Not with his family, not with his children, but with Annette Lombard, the young nanny who had once been entrusted to care for them. The two were seen together at the luxurious Four Seasons surf club in Florida, laughing, embracing, and moving as if the world around them didn't exist. For the public, it was a betrayal beyond comprehension. For Cara, it was confirmation of every instinct she had tried for years to ignore. What was once the picture of privilege and unity had collapsed in a single holiday week, and the fallout had only just begun. When Annette Lombard first entered the Goodwin household in 2019, she was little more than a college student trying to earn extra money. At 21, she became the nanny to 4 children, stepping quietly into the background of a glamorous family. She was there to serve, to support, and to give stability. For Cara, Annette was supposed to be a trusted presence, someone who could help manage the demands of a young, busy household. But trust, once given, can become a weapon. Over the months that followed, Annette's role grew far beyond what anyone expected. When the pandemic struck, she moved in with the Goodwins, becoming part of their inner circle. She wasn't just the nanny anymore, she became a fixture of family life. She cared for the children like siblings, joined family dinners, and eventually crossed a line that Cara feared but could not stop. Peter began to rely on Annette not only at home but also at work. He hired her into his office, then elevated her to the role of vice president. For outsiders, it looked suspicious. For Cara, it was devastating. By 2020, she admitted in court documents, she could no longer ignore how close her husband had become to the woman who once tucked their children into bed. And then came the photographs. After Peter's explosive Christmas exit, the images of him with Annette at 5-star resorts told the world what Cara already knew. The nanny had become the lover, the private suspicions had become a public humiliation. The scandal was no longer hidden within mansion walls, it was now splashed across headlines, exposing not just infidelity, but betrayal at the deepest level. By January 2025, the whispers had turned into headlines, and the headlines into a courtroom showdown. Peter Goodwin officially filed for divorce, admitting to adultery in the legal documents. What began as a family's private collapse now stood as a public spectacle, dissected by lawyers, judges, and the media alike. Cara, no longer just the betrayed wife but now a mother fighting for survival, demanded more than an apology. She sought a fair division of assets, child support for their 4 children, and $500,000 to cover the mounting legal fees. Her case was not just about money, it was about accountability, about reclaiming dignity after a betrayal that had humiliated her before the nation. The battle lines were drawn. Peter, armed with the weight of his family's fortune, pushed to have the court documents sealed, hoping to protect his reputation from further damage. Cara resisted, determined that the truth remain visible. At the center of it all were 4 young children, caught between their mother's quiet resilience and their father's very public fall from grace. The Goodwin name, once associated with philanthropy and prestige, was now tied to scandal. And yet, the story feels unfinished. The legal war continues, custody remains uncertain, and the shadow of Annette Lombard lingers over every proceeding. For those watching, one question remains. Is this just the story of a marriage destroyed by infidelity, or a reminder that even the wealthiest families cannot buy loyalty, love, or trust? In the end, this scandal is not just about wealth, betrayal, or courtroom drama. It is a reminder that trust is fragile, and even the most powerful families can crumble when loyalty is broken. Love, respect, and honesty, without them, no amount of money can hold a family together. What do you think? Was this simply a tragic love story gone wrong, or something much deeper about power and privilege? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more stories that reveal the hidden truths behind the headlines.